Hi friends, Benjamin here with another COVID contemplation. These are unedited and unscripted musings on different issues that have been on my mind as I recover from COVID. So, I want to talk about today something that I have thought a lot about over quite a few years, off and on for some time, and that's how we train ministers to be ministers, or vocational ministers, or pastors, folks like that. Usually the way we do it is we send them off to seminary. The thing is, at this point in time, I am not convinced that that is a sustainable option, and it hasn't produced the best result overall. And I know that's a controversial statement, but let me share some of my reasoning on this. One of the big issues with seminary education, and I am a product of seminary, understand, Master of Divinity, went on for doctorate. I am not opposed to education, highly support education. Let me say that. But one of the problems I've seen, and I do see this tendency in myself as well, is for seminaries to produce academics but not necessarily effective ministers. There's a difference in that, but some of this comes from our secular culture. In secular mentality, if you know the right things, then everything falls into place. Well, that's not really biblical paradigm. Knowing truth is important, but in biblical understanding, knowledge is more than a cognitive issue. In the secular society, it tends to be primarily cognitive, so we produce people who are more wired to try to help people through a cognitive means, and it's got to go beyond that. In lots of seminaries, and mine was a little bit different on this, but not by much. There's a lot of focus for the seminary student on how much they read and study, but often not as much on how much they pray. That is a huge problem from a biblical point of view. So we wind up with seminary programs that are producing predominantly biblical theological preachers. They're trained to do biblical exegesis, translate that through a theological lens, and then deliver that through a sermon. And that's one of the primary functions. If they're at a better school, they might get some pastoral counseling training as well. Well, there's a problem there as well, and that's that more often than not, we are borrowing secular techniques, and understand, I'm not entirely opposed to this, but when those we are training for Christian ministry look first to a secular source for how to help people with their problems, that becomes a bit of a dicey issue, I think, because it does raise the question of, do we actually have something in Christ that is distinct and effective? In other words, does the Christian faith offer something unique within itself that cannot be found from outside sources, including secular sources? When pastors are trained to counsel people through predominantly secular techniques, then it really raises that question a little bit more, I think. Now, like I said, I'm not entirely opposed to this. I think there's a lot of benefit in counseling training. My doctoral program, counseling issues were part of it. I mean, we looked at family systems theory, developmental theory, other things along those lines. But at the same time, we were also learning how to integrate Christian spiritual belief and practice with that. So we come out with a practice that is very distinct from a Christian perspective. So, sorry, like I said, recovering from COVID, and this is unedited. So one of the things I am wondering is, what can we come up with that is better? Well, there are two things we have to balance here. I have seen, growing up, huge problems from the uninformed going into ministry. People who have not studied, they know nothing about Christian history, they have probably never read a single theological text at all. And they wind up going into ministry because they feel called to preach, and the church is very supportive of this. They see the call of God as being the primary thing. So the person goes into ministry with no training at all, and the outcome is usually not good. Some of them may legitimately be called, even without the training, and they wind up being able to show some good fruit in their pastoral care, but more often than not, their teaching is wanted. On the flip side, I have seen plenty of cases where you have people that they have graduated a solid seminary program, they go into the church, but they are still not equipped for pastoral ministry. One of the most common refrains from seminary educated pastors when they first get in the church is, wow, seminary never trained me for this. And they will say that over and over again because their seminary set them up to think theologically, know church history, things like that. But when it comes to foundational Christian ministry of helping people connect with God and find solution for their issues in Christ, they're often not as well equipped. So we need something that is not so academic, but at the same time not negligent in actually educating the people in the intellectual content they do need. But another concern that I see is we need programs that are actually formational to the whole person. It can't be just about the mind. But at the same time, if they are spending 3 years doing nothing but praying and not studying at all, well, you get somebody that I'd love to have them pray for me, let me tell you. But teach me? Not necessarily. So, what do you think? I've got my own ideas, and I may be sharing that in the not-too-distant future. But let's talk about this. What can churches do differently in how they prepare those that are going into ministry? Love to hear thoughts down in the comments. Let's get a conversation going on this. Like I said, I've got some of my own ideas. This is something I've been thinking about for a while, and I may do that in another video. But for the moment, love to hear your thinking. Keep the discussion respectful, and we will catch you in the next COVID Contemplations. Take care. God bless.